Today, we're diving into the world of home studios with a guest who's made that his life's work. Joining us is Junaid Ahmed, a home studio architect, entrepreneur, and author whose expertise is transforming how creators approach their craft, calling on 2 decades of experience in video production and home studio innovation. Junaid's new book, Home Studio Evolution From Beginner to Broadcast, is climbing the ranks on bestseller lists for video production and outlines what he calls the 7 stages of home studio evolution, guiding creators from the first baby steps, hopefully up to broadcast quality. But he doesn't just focus on equipment upgrades, emphasizing the importance of vision, authenticity, consistency, and crafting your brand and your image. In addition to exploring Junaid's journey and how a well-designed home studio can be a game changer in your work, we're also going to be taking your questions, so don't forget to get those in via Makana, and of course at askofficehours.global. Junaid, welcome to Office Hours. Whoops, can't hear you, Junaid.
Oh my God, CJ, thank you so much for bringing me on. I'm super excited to be here. Good to be back in good company.
So I guess we'll start at the beginning. How did you get into this line of work? I'm going to focus on helping people improve their image. What is your journey to get you where you are?
I was looking to level up my space, and when I found that there wasn't nothing out there, I was basically trying to solve my own problem, right? And that's what it all comes down to. When you look at the iPhone, the iPod, they were trying to solve a problem for themselves. So I was trying to solve a problem for myself, trying to find a way that I can show up more authentically, with more confidence. And as I did this, and as I showed up in different Zoom meetings and Zoom calls, people started asking me, how are you doing this? And as we all know in Office Hours Global, we've been doing this because we come from that video production background. So as I'm doing this, people started asking me, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me figure out the audio, the microphone, the camera? And as I started helping them, I was like, wait, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something that I can do. So I formed Home Studio Mastery as a program for helping people about 3 years ago and continuing to help them throughout the days, but the question still stands the same. What camera, what mic are you using? So I was like, what if I had a book that would lay out all the things that they need to think about? Because anybody can go and buy a camera and put it together and, look quite decent. So that was the thing that I was trying to solve for myself. And people started asking, and that got me into this space.
Yeah, and really there's a question there where, we, despite a lot of us coming into this community with a background, some sort of background in production or some sort of just intuition about how to do certain things. Here's framing, here's lighting, here's audio quality. We're always trying to improve. Mm-hmm. And if this group is trying to improve all the time, and your message is resonating very much with me and with our community here, you're having to talk to a lot of people who aren't technically inclined. So what is it like to work with folks who don't, have a lingua franca about anything, cameras, audio, lighting, etc.?
That's a really excellent question, because even though they don't know a lot about the technology, they just want to know, hey, what is the little simple thing that I can do to get one level up? And we have a ton of new webcams that have come to the forefront in the past 4 years. It's kind of mind-blowing how many new webcams that there are in the market, and the new cameras that are continuing to evolve. And the beautiful thing is, physics hasn't changed. Physics is the same, right? So camera photography, somebody mentioned that, there's 3 pillars in photography. You've got the ISO, you've got the focal length, and you've got the camera sensor size. No, focal length, the f-stop, and then the sensitivity of the sensor. So all of those things. So what I'm doing is I'm teaching them the basics. I'm like, hey, if you understand this basics, and then I'm also guiding them step by step. Like, okay, let's take this, make sure that your camera is eye level. You're not looking up at it or you're not looking down at it, because you want to sit at the same level as the people that you're talking to. So I'm teaching them bit by bit in small baby steps fashion so that once they are comfortable at that first stage, they're like, okay, I'm comfortable here. I can do 100 videos at this stage. And then as they go through that process, as they go through that journey themselves, they start to realize, oh my God, I can do this better now. You stop to think about all the things. Think about when you're teaching your children or your driving age children, hey, these are the things you need to focus on when you're driving a car. Yes, you can drive a go-kart, right? It's very easy. But what you need to start focusing on is other people on the road. Anybody can drive a car, but to understand what else is happening around on the road is super important. So I focus on the basics and then build up that muscle so that they can take in more information and work the next stage.
So it sounds like regardless of what level that someone's coming to you and saying, hey, Junaid, I need your help, the very first things that you're trying to establish is the things that is building that good foundation. What kind of room are you in? What kind of lighting situation? Where is the camera? What's in your background? But you also talk a lot. I was reading a little bit on your website, and I didn't get to read the whole book, but I read some of the book. You also talk about what is the mission? What is your message? And is the brand that you're portraying on via the screen, via the broadcast, which really is what it is. It's the broadest that we've ever had. How do you get people to stop thinking about the technology and then move over to what are we trying to accomplish?
That's an excellent question. And the reason why that vision is important is because when we watch an ad or when we listen to an ad on TV or when we watch a movie, there's a mission that the director had to make that movie. There's a mission that the commercials director or the company had to make that commercial. They're trying to sell you a product. They're trying to sell you a service. They're trying to get you into their brand new car. So again, everything has a mission and a vision, and you're going to be attracted to the thing that's in line with where you are in your journey. So when you figure out what your journey is, what your mission is, what you're trying to do, it makes it a lot easier to find the right type of people that are going to be, that are going to know, like, and trust you to say, hey, I want to work with this person as opposed to that person. Why are there so many different coffee shops in the world? Like down the street, if you go, there's at least 5 different coffee shops. Dunkin's got coffee, McDonald's got coffee, Starbucks, you name them. Everybody has coffee. But each one of those companies have a different message. They have a different vision, and people assimilate with the mission that they have, and they'll go to that product. So the same thing as we as entrepreneurs, as we as people, we also have a agenda in our minds or a mission in our mind. Or a vision, like what are we trying to do? I, as a parent of 4 kids, I'm trying to show them that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. You want to go be a YouTuber? You can do it. You want to go be a podcaster? You can do it. You want to go drive fast cars? You can do it. So I'm involving myself in as many things as possible to show them that anything is possible if you put your mind to it, if you have that mission. So the same message I'm putting across to the people that I'm working with. Like, hey, if we figure out that mission, you no longer have to worry about the technology. And so how I get them past that is I do a 30-day video challenge. And I'll send them a prompt like, hey, just answer this question on video. Don't worry about anything else at all. So as they do this practice, like, oh my God, I just did 30 videos. And once you've done those 30 reps, you're so much further ahead than you were when you started.
We do have some questions coming in from the community, so we're going to hop into those, and then hopefully we can get to talking a little bit more, because besides just being on video, one of the other things that you've put your mind to is being a beekeeper, and I want to hear about that. But Alexander, let's get into Zach's question.
Our first question is from Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'm looking for some lighting for my home studio, both background up lighting and key lighting for when I'm making video calls. Anyone use something like this from Elgato?
All right, so got the key light there. What do you think?
So Elgato Key Light is a great light for sure. It's designed for gamers. It's designed to be closer together. And when you're gaming, you're not really showing up on camera as much as you're paying attention to the game in front of you. So that light makes sure that you're lit up and you can show up in a little piece, little thumbnail of you in front of that video stream as you're playing and you're streaming. So it works really good. But if you're going to be on camera like I am and like you are, CJ, and like Alexander, you want to make sure that you have a light that's larger, that provides a much more broader stroke of light on you as well. And of course, Jason as well. And as well, you want to make sure that it's soft enough and away from your eyesight so that you're not looking directly at the light. And that's why one post that I did a few days ago is delete your ring lights, even though nobody can delete them. But it got a pretty good feedback on that one.
It is interesting since more and more of us are either telecommuting or at least communicating more on Zoom and other platforms like that.
Yeah.
More people are paying attention to what can I do to look better. And it's almost like even though it is a lot of setup and it is not necessarily automatic or easy to get a picture that looks really good, you also have to look like you didn't try really hard.
That is true. That is absolutely true. And the reason it takes a lot of time in the beginning is because that's the investment in time and energy and equipment that you put together. For example, we're living in our homes for many, many years. When you first move into the home, you don't have all the gear or you don't have all the furniture for all the rooms unless you're moving from another home. And it takes time to set up your dining room, your family room, your living room. And over time, you might change things around because you want to be comfortable. You want to reduce the friction to have fun and enjoy with your friends. So studios serve the same purpose for entrepreneurs. It's that one place that you create content, that you focus the strategy on your business. And if that place is a place that you're troubleshooting tech all the time, well, there's no time for business anymore. So you want to make sure that you take a weekend, take a month to make sure that all of those things are dialed in. So then the continuing months, you're now focused on providing value, bringing content, putting content together, or working with your clients.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a little tiny blip of you were going to share your lighting setup with us. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So I have two main lights up here. I got my back camera on the slider here just so you can see a little close-up of things and whatnot. Then I'm also, put a secondary camera to show people, hey, this is not a virtual background because that background looks so cool. What I also like to do is showcase the different lights so that people understand what it means to actually set up a stage. So what I like to do is, as any painter does, they start with a blank canvas. Now they have a ton of ideas in their hand, and they'll probably be looking at a landscape. They might be looking at a person's portrait to paint. They start with a blank canvas. So I like to do the same thing. I like to start with a blank canvas, right? And then I'll bring in the different lights, the key light, the fill light, the hair light, right? So I bring in all these lights one at a time and then tweak them so that they work and look the way you want them. So what I've done is I've created a automated scene inside my computer or for my home. Say, hey, anytime I'm in the studio, I turn on this mode and it turns on all the lights that I need so that I can show up on camera without having to fiddle and spend extra minutes. Because every single minute that you spend on troubleshooting technology, you're taking away from your thought process to get back into focusing on the work that you really are here to do.
And it's clear that you that you build that live for people all the time, because there's that progression of going through and being automatic and not thinking about it is really what, like you said, it's about getting those reps in, and then all of a sudden the stuff that once was causing a little bit of anxiety now just becomes automatic.
Yeah.
I'll be frank, I thought your camera slider was a cat, because all I can see
you can see a little thing moving in the back.
I can see it moving back and forth, and I have you in teleprompter glass, so it's not quite as defined at the low end.
Yeah.
So all I saw was this thing breaking that red light in the background. It's like, oh, he's got a cat. Nope, that is a really nice camera slider. Let's go to the next question.
Next one's from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. What are successful tactics to interest executives in upgrading their home office studio?
Man, that is a really good question. I wish I had a better answer.
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
CJ.
No, I was going to say the one thing that we've talked about is playing back what they look and sound like is a good start.
Absolutely. And one thing that I was thinking about is there's a ton of YouTube channels, podcasters, and we see how clean their setup looks like, right? So the question is, would you watch this for an hour, or would you watch this for an hour? And then that basically self-answers the question for that entrepreneur, that executive. Like, okay, yeah, you're right. The reason I watch this TV show is because it's so well produced. Well, then why isn't your video so well produced so people can pay attention and spend time in it?
I think the other piece that we talk about a lot is, or that we need to think about when we're talking about executives, is they're in the business of moving ideas forward. Sure. They're in the business of leadership, of motivating people. And can you share any anecdotes that you might have about how someone's ability to communicate changed when they started focusing more on how they looked and sounded? You work with hundreds and thousands of people on this. I'm sure this has got to be something you run into.
No, 100%. And what's really important in understanding that, or even answering that, is if the audio doesn't sound good, right, people are not going to listen, or they're going to be reading the transcript maybe, because the captions, Zoom is required to record captions. But it comes down to, hey, how important idea are you putting forward? And I'm probably falling all over myself on this one. It just showcases. Let me go to it from a different perspective. It's almost like you're showing up to a very important board meeting, but you forgot to put your pants on, or you're not wearing a jacket because, hey, you think it's virtual, but it's not virtual. The reason you want to level up, or we level up our spaces, is because not only do we care about ourselves and our confidence, but we also care about the other people who are consuming the content. So as an executive, it goes to show that how much do you care about the people on the other side? Because yes, your ideas are absolutely amazing, and we love those ideas. But how important are we putting on the people that we're trying to sell this idea to?
Alexander, you had something to throw in on this one?
Yeah, so I tend to be, I'm not saying this is going to be the right strategy for everyone, because it depends where you are, I guess, in the ladder, and how well you know that person's personality. But the people that I've worked with always appreciated brutal honesty. So my approach would probably just be to ask them, if you were going to meet with someone important and you had an important message to convey, would you show up in shorts with a Hawaiian t-shirt? Do you think they would take you seriously? No. Yeah. So why do you think anyone's going to take your message seriously if you show up with bad lighting, bad video, and you can't be heard clearly? Communication is key, and I think a lot of people in the corporate world understand, especially people in a leadership position, understand how crucial communication is to get that message conveyed across clearly, especially if you need buy-in from people, whether it's the people that you work for or maybe it is a potential client you're trying to get some deal with. I think that stuff is very easy to understand for most people.
You're absolutely right, Alexander.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alexander. And that actually reminds me when I was talking to my cousin who works at LinkedIn, and he was telling me the studio that they were setting up for the CEO, and they were like, "We're setting up the studio, and you're not gonna believe the Excel sheet or the number on how much this costs, because not only do they want to make sure that this is a studio that he comes in and speaks with other people, but they also want to be able to manage the stream from a studio space or a control room essentially." So I was like, wow, that's insane. I mean, they are definitely taking it seriously on the message that they're putting out. And it goes to show how far you can go with that type of setup as well. Enables them to go so much farther. And it also builds the confidence of the CEO and executive. They can speak in more authority. They can think less about, oh my God, am I going to be sounding weird? It just helps them along the way. So thank you, Alexander, for a reminder.
Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri is asking, where does the panel go, or who do you look at to be inspired by various studio upgrades?
Oh.
That's a really great question. And where do I go? Well, I consume a lot of content. I do a lot of research in not only the gear that's available. So there's new technology coming out every single month, like literally every month. Sony's introducing a new camera, or Canon is introducing new camera. OBS Bot's got new stuff. Logitech has new stuff. So I'm constantly researching, looking at that. Hey, what do people need? How is it going to look? And I'm also researching and looking at content people are creating on YouTube, content that's available to literally everybody on television, TV shows, movies. Like everybody is using a certain type of setup. So what kind of look do you want to go with? Right? It all comes down to, hey, what are you trying to represent? A reason like a lot of us have this straight shot is because we learn from the TV news host. And like, okay, they have the straight shot. They're talking directly to the audience. And we are a single person setup for now looking to our side, to somebody else, as most morning shows are. So again, you want to think about what type of setup that you want to mimic with, and what type of messaging is that going to show up when you're showing up on camera. So there's a lot of elements that go into it. The other thing that I absolutely love is personal branding, or what are the colors of your brand? Or what are the things that you love? For example, in this shot, you'll see I've got the Avengers poster over here. I've got Iron Man back here. I've got some Star Wars, because those are the things that I love. That's what differentiates me from everybody else. Like, oh, Junaid loves Marvel. He loves Star Wars. He loves all these things. I have a common ground of technology, or common ground of something that we can relate and talk about.
Next question.
Florence Donald in Silver Spring asks, what would you recommend as 3 key to-dos when building a studio for audio podcast only versus video podcast?
So, great question. The first thing that you want to focus on for audio podcast is that you have a good microphone, a quiet room, and you're doing well with sound absorption. Because there is a thing, you can buy the most expensive microphone, but if your room is not treated, if you have wood floors and flat walls and nothing on the walls, you are going to get an echo back, even if it's a dynamic microphone and you're sitting really close. You're going to get that echo. So you want to make sure that you're treating the room, have a good microphone, and in a quiet place as much as you can. Like, I was using a Yeti microphone a few years ago, and for the most part, it worked just fine. And then summer came in, and I'm recording these episodes, and I could hear my kids playing in the next room. I'm like, okay. Before when I was recording, they weren't home, so it worked fine, right? But now that there's people in the other room, they're going to hear. So you want to make sure that you're looking at all of those three aspects for your audio podcast. Now, if you step into the video space, audio is still going to be super, super important because people are going to pay attention to the audio. We are auditory human beings. Everybody says, I'm a visual person. Yes, we're a visual learner, but we all listen through our ears. So you want to make sure that you're, number one, you've got really good audio and you have really good lighting in any camera that you have that you can put at eye level and frame yourself right. You're going to show up really sharp and really clean for that video podcast.
It's interesting to think about when you move from audio only and you go over to video. Now all of a sudden, especially in your case, you have multiple angles. So you have a reverse shot, you have a second angle on you. You have to think about everything that's in the background there. How does that affect your ability to control reflections or install sound absorption? Like, how do you keep that balance?
Great question. So you want to make sure where your sound is going. So even in my reverse shot, I have sound panels back there on the wall, which absorb the sound and doesn't keep it from bouncing back. So again, having some kind of idea of, hey, what are my colors? Maybe instead of red and black, you might do blue and yellow, right? It all comes down to, hey, what are my brand colors? I'm going to integrate those colors into that setup. In my second shot, I had the smart idea of putting vinyl floor panels on the wall. And then I realized it was giving me a lot of echo. So I was like, I need to break it up. So I put posters and pictures on the wall to help break up that sound. I can't really put any sound absorption things on there because it's like it's a looking wall. So different ways to break up the sound are available for, anybody to set up their space.
You kind of, as soon as you went to that second shot, I thought, oh, where would I put a second shot? And as soon as I did that, I thought, oh, everything that's out of frame is not suitable. Like I've spent a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out sound reflections and trying to make sure that the light that's on me isn't spilling over into the rest of the room. And that's a lot more of a kind of a Mickey Mouse amateur setup compared to some of the things that you're building, obviously. But
CJ,
it opens up a whole
if I
new
were
mind.
to go, if I were to change anything at all in your setup, I would just change what the camera sees. So you can put the camera much higher so it doesn't see the lights and it just sees your desk setup, and you have a pretty good reverse shot there.
I might. That's a good point. Maybe I put that a little higher and angle down. That would be a good idea. But I'm going to forget that for at least a week because I've got other things to do. Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. What studio furniture makers do you prefer that would have a pull-out keyboard shelf?
That's a great question. I think there are a few manufacturers that have pull-out keyboard shelf built in. My keyboard is usually just sitting on top of my setup over here. If I were to switch to this, I just have my keyboard sitting on top. I can move away. And that's, again, it depends on how functional versus how focused on, system you want your place. But there are a ton of manufacturers out there that do have a pull-out keyboard option. I don't have specific names. I think IKEA might have some things. There's a very high-end desk manufacturer that, and it gives you like a height adjustable desk system that they have additional things. But there are a few out there.
And also when you're buying a desk, one of the things to look for is stay away from beveled desk edges. Because it's like everything that you're clamping to the desk, whether it's a microphone or a keyboard shelf or a tripod or a monitor stand, a lot of them will use that little C-mount that has the clamp on the bottom, and the bevel makes it kind of go all cattywampus. But I've got a couple of those under desk keyboard tray shelves that use two of those clamps in the front, and then I think Vivo is they're an office furniture guy that you see on or company rather that you see on Amazon. And I like them.
Yeah, Vivo's good.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana is asking, do we still need to stay ahead of the competition and or have most professionals caught up after the COVID gear shortages? Is it now technique rather than tech?
That's a great question. I mean, it's a combination of the two, because even though I've been in this space for so long, only so many people know me. So the question is, are you ahead of the curve and you are leading a tribe of people that are coming and learning for you? Because again, what's the point of setting up a space? Like, either you're educating or you're entertaining. And based on those two questions that you might answer for yourself, you could then say, okay, I'm ahead enough in my setup. I just got to focus on the content. I got to build systems. I got to build things that are going to make all of that stuff that you built scalable, right? Scalability comes down to, okay, how much time can I spend in this space? Can I spend 2 hours? Can I spend 5 hours? Or do I want to be only here for 2 hours and spend the rest of the time with my family? So again, your mileage may vary based on where you want to go.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gabriela Shesho Mustiera and Susay Marie is asking, for Junaid, how has AI evolved your studio and your book? Great book, by the way. Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. So AI has been around for 50 plus years. We just now have access to it, right? Google's search engine's been running on AI. Microsoft search engine, like, they all have been using a form of machine learning and data collection solution that gives you an answer based on what they want you to have. But now we have access to AI in ways that we didn't have 20 years ago. I mean, when November 2022, when they opened up the gates, like, hey, anybody can ask AI a question. And since that it's evolved, you have so many different ways. So how has it evolved my studio space? It's helped me understand and do more research at a faster pace than I was able to do before. So again, I use it as a research assistant, as a brainstorming thing more than anything else. So that's how it'll evolve your studio space. So for example, once you have your studio space set up, now you might be like, okay, what can I talk about on my topic? What are some of the things can I talk about? So you can use AI to ask those questions. Again, the other thing that I also recommend is make sure you have expertise in that space and that you're back checking or you're fact checking all the things that AI is telling you. Because there have been a lawyer or a few lawyers, I don't know how many lawyers, but one lawyer was disbarred because he just depended on what AI gave it to him. So again, it is a feature, it's not a product. It is going to be available in more and more products as we go forward. In fact, iOS 18 and the next macOS is going to have it built in, image generation. In fact, I was just looking the other day, and on Facebook, it says, imagine with AI. And as you type in a question, it'll create an image for you in newsfeed. So again, it's something that you want to be aware of and understand it. Again, the better educated we are, the better humans we are in this world.
Next question.
Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies is asking, any resources to learn from you or others or on how to train ourselves to do what you do for other jurisdictions?
That's a great question. I mean, they're all been really great questions. Whoever's fielding these questions has done a really awesome job. How to learn what I've been doing? Well, what I've been doing is I'm learning as I go. So depending on where you are in the journey, the book is a really great start for sure. There's a ton of podcast office hours here. Make sure that you tune in every day on this because you're going to learn a ton through here as well. Find your vision. What is the vision for you? What do you want to help others with? And what are you bringing top? Because if you can answer those questions for yourself, you will find all of the answers available on the web, on YouTube, like literally everywhere. But again, you got to know what you want before you can go ask the world to give it to you.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway is asking, what is your opinion on using a wide-angle lens for a YouTube look versus a more traditional 50 millimeter focal length in a home studio? When would you choose each?
That's a great question. And if you look at back in the day, or all the YouTube videos that Casey Neistat has been shooting, now he's been shooting full frame using 24 millimeter or a wider angle lens. But if you looking at a crop sensor with a 15 millimeter lens, well, that crop sensor already gives you a 24 millimeter. So again, depending on what are you going to shoot with that camera. If you're in your home studio and your space and you want to show a lot of being shown in the spot, then you would use a different one. For example, I'm using a 35 millimeter on the full frame for my face camera. Then I've got a wide angle lens back here, 24 millimeter wide angle lens on a full frame, so you see a lot more of the shot. And then same thing for my secondary camera angle. This is probably at 28 millimeters. So again, it all comes down to the context of what are you trying to show. And you'll see this in movies. In movies, they're using super wide angle lens to set the stage. Hey, we are in this hotel. This is where the scene is happening. And then they'll go inside the hotel, and now you're focusing on the face of the person, and they're probably using a 50 millimeter lens. So again, it's all context. It all depends on the context of what you're trying to shoot. You can use all sorts of camera angles as long as you know what the end product is going to be. So reverse engineer to where you want to get to, and then work backwards to say, okay, this is what I need to use in the different shots. Like I've been on different sets as well, and they're using, again, they're using wide angle lens for different aspects, and they're using short angle lens for other aspects. Again, think about what you want to do, think about what you want to get to, and then work backwards.
It's one of those things. I'm always scared of a wide angle lens because of the way that I feel like it makes my face look funny. When I'm on a 50 here, but then we had a show that we did from NAB. I was in a hotel room. I wasn't in my normal setup. So I brought along a wider lens. And then when I put it on there, it fit the room, it fit the shape. But when I watched the playback, I was like, whoa. Do you have a sweet spot or something that you prefer for something that's flattering for face shapes, or any general guidance there?
Yeah, I like to stick with the 35 millimeter lens, mainly because it's the most natural. I mean, our eyes are 50 millimeter, but 35 is very close to the 50. It's not as close, but still creates a much more natural look than a much wider angle lens. Now, if you're using a 16 millimeter, let's say on a crop sensor, again with the crop factor, that's already a 24 millimeter lens. And depending on how far or how close you put it on from you, I think you're going to get a different look as well. So if I were closer to a wide angle lens, my face would look different as opposed to if I was a little further away.
So just by a function of how far away you're sitting on a crop sensor, that takes some of the distortion away. Right. Whereas, if you were to put it on a full frame and have to actually get into position, you'd have a little bit trickier.
Yeah, more or less.
Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada asks, you have a very specific style and tone to your setup. Do you recommend others create a personal brand for their home studios? What does that look like?
100%. The reason you want to create a personal brand for your own studio is because before you even say the word, before you even say anything, they know exactly what you're about. And that personal brand is represented by the colors, by the things that you have on your wall, by the things that you have in your setup. And it also becomes a showstopper. It also becomes people from scrolling away. Like, oh, this looks really interesting. Let me see what this guy has to say. Right. So you want to make sure that setup is a showstopper. So you want to brand that look as much as you can because it's going to create that assimilation with the people that are on the other side.
How much do you, at what point during somebody's evolution, I can't remember the 7 stages off the top of my head, but at what point during that evolution do you start to really focus on how it feels as opposed to, is everything plugged in and does everything have to sound good at a real base level?
So the feeling, the 7 stages start with the novice, the hobbyist, the enthusiast, the semi-pro, the pro, expert, and then you have the broadcaster. So at each level, you're adding different gear to your setup, right? So how does it feel? How does it start to feel more natural? Well, again, as human beings, we're continually growing, right? So repeat that last part for me again.
No, it was just about
running off.
At what point do you start to talk more about the branding and how does it look and feel? Do you bring that on really, really early, or is that something that you have to get a base level foundational understanding of the tech first? Like where I don't want to, I guess.
Yeah. So
in which order are we putting the cart before the horse?
Yeah. So at the enthusiast level is when I say, okay, now let's start bringing elements into the space because you're comfortable enough in front of a camera. You sound good. Your messaging is dialed in. Now let's start bringing some branding into your space. So now you're, as an enthusiast, you start moving up to the semi-pro level. That's where you're starting to bring in more branding.
That's great. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, what has the biggest leap in technology since you began studying studios? Or maybe changes in different areas like lighting, audio, cameras, and switching?
So the biggest change that came for me was when I discovered the A10 Mini back in April of 2020. And I was like, wow, if people are spending $200 on these cam links, and this is for $300, I'm going to give me this one because I can switch the many different cameras that I have. The other thing that changed was going from DSLR cameras to mirrorless. That was a huge jump because all I saw was, yes, there's a ton of mirrorless cameras, but they're either crop sensor or they're either Sony or they're other, different brands. I think Panasonic was the original one with the mirrorless cameras, and I was like, well, I don't want a micro four thirds. I want a full frame. I've done crop sensor already. So those were some of the big changes that I saw, and I was waiting anxiously when in 2018 the first Canon mirrorless camera, full frame mirrorless camera dropped. So those are the big things that I kept watching and looking for to bring into my space.
It also seems like since the pandemic, when more and more people had to think about, okay, if I had to invest a little bit, what would be the first things I do? It created a market that then drove a lot of investment. And so now you see there's a lot more change now than there was. Like the pace of change is accelerated tremendously.
Absolutely. And what we also saw was the chip shortage also, slowed down a little bit of the change coming through. Like there was a lot of back orders. A company had to turn off entire lines of cameras, but we did see a lot better stuff come out at the end because they're like, okay, we can't get this chip. Let's redefine this, and you have better stuff coming out now.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, average bedroom 10 by 14, starting with 3 to 4 6-foot rolling tables, want to be able to rearrange tables on the fly. Problem is big ceiling fan in the middle of the room. What should I replace it with?
So you can leave the ceiling fan in the room as long as your camera angle is set up correctly, right? So if the camera angle is looking up, you're going to see the fan. But if the camera is set up at eye height, like for example, for me, the camera is at probably 5 feet from the ground, it's not going to see the ceiling fan. And a 10 by 14 is a pretty big room. You could definitely set up a movable studio setup there with desks and cameras mounted on those desks. And, depending on how you want that setup to look like.
Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania asked, Junaid, are you using a cable gantry to connect your slider camera, or are you using a wireless connection?
Yes, so the camera is connected via a long HDMI cable that's then coming into my A10 Mini. I tried to do like an extension software that would go through an Ethernet, and that would like always fail. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to run a long cable from the camera. So it's all wired, yeah. And I control it wirelessly through Bluetooth on my phone where the camera needs to stop and go.
And if you don't mind sharing, or maybe I missed it, who's the manufacturer of the slider then?
Absolutely. So the manufacturer of the slider is rhinocameragear.com. It's called the Evolution model. And yeah,
that's really
a 42
cool.
inch.
Such a good looking. I mean, I've never seen anybody take their reverse shot and put it on a slider like that, but that just feels so nice when you switch to it.
Thank you. And it was funny is that I didn't. So I got one of these guys back in 2018, and I used it in some commercials and whatnot. And then during the pandemic, for the first 2 years, it was just sitting on the corner. I was like, yes, I'm going to go shoot some videos. And I was like, why don't I just add it to my setup? And that's how it came.
Yeah, there is something to be said for that when you're thinking about what can I do and what can I change, and you just look around and say, okay, well, what am I not using that's already in the room? Can I get creative?
In fact, I have a fourth camera angle that I use with my phone, and I've got an Orbit camera setup that make stuff work or make art. There's a YouTube channel, Make Art. Josh, what's his name? Josh something. So he had a Kickstarter. Yes, Make Art Now. That's it. So he had produced his product called the Orbit on Kickstarter campaign. So I picked one of these guys up. It basically mounts in the middle of the ceiling, and you can mount a camera on one end, and it can rotate around you. So that's something that's been a lot of fun to play with too.
Next question.
This one's for me. Change often requires iteration and can be slow, but with more people working from home and an increased interest of having better studio setups, do you think we will see more people feeling like they're being left behind if they don't conform?
That's a great question. And because there's a lot of people going back into the public, going back into the real world, it all comes down to, hey, what are you serving from your studio? So there is going to be a little bit of a FOMO, a little bit of oh my God, I need to have that. But the question is, does it serve a purpose in the setup that you are? Does it serve a purpose to your audience? Does it serve a purpose to your tribe? And if those answers are saying yes, 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 then yes, you should spend some time and, level up your space. But if the answer is no, then, you're good.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gabriana Acheso Mestiera and Sault Ste. Marie is asking, for Junaid Ahmed, what makes a studio a home? How do you get there? Thank you.
A studio is home when you can be sitting here and your kids come in and they could be on camera and be comfortable. That's what makes a studio a home for me. I have plenty of space in my background. I even had a swing hanging from one of the things up here. So when the kids are here, they can hang, they can swing on there and have some fun. So you want to make it as homey as usable as possible. And when you do that, you know that it is a home. It is your home. It is your studio and it is your home. So make sure that you integrate all of the aspects of your life into it, all of the people that are in your life into it as well, because there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's all one life.
Next question.
Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies asks, has something like using blankets and towels, shower curtain diffusion, etc. ever come into your suggestions for clients, or is it only pro solutions, and why?
Absolutely. I have recommended to use shower curtains. I have recommended to use bed sheets to diffuse the light coming from a window. I've asked to, hang blankets, get moving blankets that are a lot cheaper than specific sound blankets because they serve the same purpose. Again, I'm trying to show that you don't need to empty your bank to have a nice studio setup, to have a place that you can broadcast from. You want to be as comfortable as possible, and that's why when you go to a cycling store to buy a bicycle, they're like, well, how much do you want to spend? Like, I don't want to spend too much. I'm like, well, start with this one. And when you're ready, you can upgrade to the next one. It all comes down to where you're comfortable, how much do you want to spend, what is it going to bring to your audience, what is it going to bring into your business. Think about all of those aspects, because when you do, you're much better educated, and then you can even set up a little flow chart or a little project program or a software. I can't remember the name. A Gantt chart, essentially. It's like, okay, from the first month, I'm just going to focus on working on these things. When I've achieved that, then I'm ready to move to the next one. Now, I'm a cyclist as well, and you mentioned earlier beekeeping. So when I was a cyclist, I bought the cheapest bike that I could find in 2016. And when I rode this bike, it was totally not the type of bike that I needed, because it was the TT or time trial bike. I'm like, why does it has these handles sticking out in the front? Right. So immediately I fell off of that bike a couple of times, but I was like, okay, this is the wrong one. I need to practice. And then I got the right bike. When I got the right bike, which was a 2014, I was riding with other people. Now, they were much faster than me, but I was still able to stay up with them based on how much training that I did. And I was like, I'm going to upgrade my bike when I can keep with these guys for the entirety of 100 miles. That never happened. But what it shows is there's more work involved in yourself than the equipment that you're going to be purchasing. And that's
it's like there's a diminishing return almost. You can keep spending money like crazy.
Yes,
but
sir.
if you don't take the time to understand the tools that you're using, it's just going to be a more expensive tool. That's if your focus is on being result driven,
yes,
or outcome driven, as opposed to what gear do I need to buy, then that approach is the result driven approach is going to pay back a lot faster.
100%. Thanks, CJ.
Next question.
Craig McFarland in Boston, Massachusetts is asking, when do you tell people, trust me, this is best for you, versus giving them all the background technical reasons for using something?
I'll never tell them to trust me, because there's a lot more people out there with a lot more knowledge than I have that are talking about this stuff. So that's why I want to make sure that you're as much educated so that you can ask me educated questions. If somebody's telling you to trust them, that's the first reason that you need to be like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm going to do my research, because trust is something that's built not by asking people to trust you. It's built through education. It's built through conversation. It's built through answering every single question that they have, and then say, okay, does this make sense? If it doesn't, go do some more research. Go educate yourselves, because as you and I, we've all purchased cars over the years, and we're spending anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 on these cars. We do all the research that we know, so we are better educated. You're not going to go buy a car because the salesperson said this is the best car for you. No thanks. I'm going to go learn some more. So again, same comes with the studio. This is a big investment for your space. It's going to be there for a long time. I can take all of these equipment from here and set up in a different room. So you want to make sure that anything that you set up in your space, you're well educated. You know what it's going to do for you. You know where you can go with it. And from that perspective, I want to make sure that you're as comfortable as possible with the things that you're doing. So I'm never going to ask people to trust me. Trust the process. Trust yourself to be better educated.
Next question.
Bradley Perigo in Wakefield, UK asks, standing or sitting down? Is it preference or is one better than the other?
You know, that's a $1 million question. Now, both I can see both all four of us are sitting down in front of our cameras. But depending on the content, you might want to stand up, right? So when I'm suggesting a gear for my people, like, hey, get a standing desk. So you have both options. You can raise the desk up, stand up in front of a video, record that video. One of my friends who I helped, he's a stand-up guy. He's always recording videos and he's always on Zoom. He's recording looms while he's standing in front of the camera. So again, it's a personal preference. Yes, I can stand and walk on a treadmill here in front of the camera. But again, do I want to do that? You know, it's again personal preference. It all comes down to what are you most comfortable with.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles asks, what future improvements are you planning on making with your own setup?
I would like wireless HDMI transmitters for all my cameras so I can remove wires with low latency. And I know there's no such thing. But that's something that, I might eventually do. I can like mount my smartphone on this rotating camera and show the stuff around, but I'm just focusing more on helping others. Probably the only upgrade that I'm looking to do actually is probably get a Mac Studio. Because right now I'm running on a Mac Mini 2020. And sometimes I have to close down some applications because it gives me an error. I'm like, hey, you've run out of memory. I'm like, no, I haven't. I still remember everything.
Next question.
Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona asks, do you have a story about an educator or teacher whom you helped up their game in remote teaching?
Absolutely. There's one gentleman that is teaching college class from his home studio. And because he's being watched and he's recording this content from home, making sure that all the stuff that he's writing on board or all the stuff that he's writing on the whiteboard is also showing up. So having a secondary camera angle to focus on that board when he's doing that, using a wireless microphone for him. So again, he's been able to keep more attention of the audience, more attention of the students as he's teaching those courses and as he's teaching on his meetings through that.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana is back. As you are now mentoring others, who have been some of your mentors, and this can be in any area you pursue?
Absolutely. So I've worked with several different mentors, from mindset. Being my first mentor was CDs from Tony Robbins almost 20 years ago. And that helped me open up my mind. That helped me to see the world from a totally different perspective. He was the first one. And then, of course, there's people like Pat Flynn, Alex Lindsay. We've got Steve Jobs, reading books from other people, James Clear. Like, there's a ton of people that have been huge mentors for me from mindset perspective, from technology perspective. Peter McKinnon, Casey Neistat, filmmakers, Caleb from DSLR Video Shooter. Like, all of these people have been in one way or another mentoring me and teaching me, hey, this is what's actually happening. And I'm a huge person. I have a huge proponent of educating yourself, because the more you educate yourself, the better understanding you have. the more farther you can go with what you're trying to achieve. And it's only after the 100th time that you hear that same message is it going to click in your mind. I was having a call with my friend last night, and he's like, people have been telling that you got to have a good hook, that you got to have this and that. But only after the 100th time that I hear it made sense to me, and I was able to put that together for myself. I was like, wow. And similar to my journey, I've interviewed over 500 guests on my own podcast, listening to their stories. And when I listen to their stories, now I'm able to tell stories. Because when the first time I stood in front of a camera trying to record a video course on iPhone video production, I had no idea what to say at the beginning. But yes, that's me. Thanks so much.
Junaid, where can people find you if they want to keep the conversation going?
Absolutely. If you want to find me, you can find me over on any social media platform at Super Junaid. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, like literally any platform. Just look for Super Junaid. And if they want to learn more about the book or more about what I offer as a home studio, head on over to homestudiomastery.com. And of course, I have my podcast, hacksandhobbies.com.
And that's Super Junaid, Junaid, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Junaid, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing with us. You are we're birds of a feather in this community. It seems like, and it really it's great that you're promoting that message out in the world, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
As we wrap today, we'd like to send out a couple thank yous. First of all, thank you to the back end crew who works day and night all over the world to keep the show going, whether that's planning these second hours, helping tech check and prep our guests, putting together a background so that I'm a little informed and it makes it easier to prepare for the show, cutting the show live, making sure we look and sound good, developing the tools that help us run the show. It is a small village of people all around the world that support this and volunteer with this community. We really do appreciate it. Also, thank you to the panelists in the first and second hours today. Your expertise and knowledge so willingly and freely shared with the group makes all of us enriched, and we do really appreciate it. And also thank you to our back end, our producers. Thank you to our producers who are asking the questions. It's a really short show without your questions, and it challenges us and makes us curious every single day. If you like what you're seeing, you can always also consider supporting us at officehours.global/donate. We'd appreciate it. If we would have had to go around today and ask all these questions in person, go to Panama, go to Trinidad, go to Cincinnati, go to everywhere and everywhere, that's what we call the Tlaloc Traversal, which today is 80,000 miles, 128,000 kilometers, and that is 631 million bananas for scale. All right, we'll see you in after hours. Thanks, everyone. We never got to the bees. Real quick, what's about the bees? Tell me about the bees, and while we're in the credits.
Sure, of course. So the bees come from 2012. I took my oldest son to allergist, and as he's pinpricking his back with all the different allergens, he mentions, hey, local honey is really good for seasonal allergies. I was like, oh, okay. So I just store away in the back of my mind. And as I'm going through this 2012, 2014, I discovered a Kickstarter campaign called Flow Hive. Like, oh, really easy to collect honey. And then a friend of mine asked me, hey, can I borrow your GoPro? Because I'm going to get some beehives on my 10-acre yard, and they're going to pollinate. I'm like, what? You can rent bees? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So 2017, I was watching, we moved to our new home in Virginia, huge backyard. I was like, now's the time I can get the bees. So in 2017, for 6 months, I'm watching YouTube videos on beekeeping. And the last video that I watched, the guy's like, if you really want to become a beekeeper, go join a local beekeepers association. And I did in December of 2017. And they're like, hey, we're starting a class in next year to teach you how to become a beekeeper. You want to join? I was like, yes, please. So 2 months later, I became, I was certified, and now we ordered the bees. And I was like, well, I want to document this journey, and I wanted to do a podcast for a long time. And I was reading Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crushing It, and he says at the end of it, if you don't have a story, just document your journey. And what better journey to document on a podcast than beekeeping? So the first season